Good afternoon, everyone. Shalom. I'm Shosh Bedrosian, spokeswoman for the National Public Diplomacy Directorate here in the Prime Minister's office. I will take a few questions after a couple of very brief points to make to you. Just make sure you put your questions in the chat of this Zoom with your name and your outlet, of course. It is Wednesday, October 22nd, and today is day 747 since our hostages were kidnapped into Gaza by Hamas terrorists. And it's been 9 days since the return of all 20 of our living hostages. The demand to bring them all home continues. Our heroic soldiers inside of Gaza received the remains of 2 of our hostages late last night. Now, following a military ceremony in the presence of an IDF chief rabbi and identification at the Forensic Institute, the remains have been identified as Aryeh Zalmanovich and Master Sergeant Reserve Tamir Adar of blessed memory. Both men were kidnapped the morning of October 7th from Kibbutz Nir Oz, a location Prime Minister Netanyahu visited back in July, where he explained the deep commitment he had to not only bring all of our hostages home, but to rebuild the kibbutz and bring life back to its people. Aryeh was kidnapped at just 85 years old while he was hiding in his safe room the morning of October 7th. Now, Aryeh was kidnapped alive that morning, and a video emerged of him wounded and bleeding as he was being kidnapped on a motorcycle. It was found out that he was later murdered in captivity by Hamas's monster terrorists. He was the oldest hostage in captivity as well. Tamir was 38 years old when he was severely wounded and kidnapped on the morning of October 7th after he left his home and his family to defend the kibbutz, as he was the deputy security coordinator and member of the emergency response team. Alongside his team, he fought against hundreds of terrorists. He did not survive the injuries. May their memories be a blessing. Hamas continues to hold the bodies of 13 of our hostages inside of the Gaza Strip right now. We will not forget that. As the ceasefire continues, Prime Minister Netanyahu and his wife, Mrs. Sarah Netanyahu, welcomed Vice President J.D. Vance and his wife, Usha Vance, here in the office today in Jerusalem. A welcome ceremony took place around 10:30 this morning, where the Prime Minister and his wife greeted the Vice President and his wife. The four soon after had lunch together, followed by a very personal meeting between the Prime Minister and Vice President. Their teams had a meeting after that as well. Both the Prime Minister and Vice President spoke a few hours ago together to the press, which many of you have probably heard, discussing the days of destiny that are ahead of us, describing the unmatched alliance and partnership between Israel and the United States as a tight-knit friendship that shares common values and goals. This relationship helped us get to this point where we are right now, to the point where a ceasefire is in place, our hostages are being released, and there's a plan in place to disarm Hamas, the terror organization. Now, through the Prime Minister's historic military pressure, coupled with President Trump's leadership and diplomatic pressure, we are at this point in time. Vice President Vance's visit comes about a week after President Trump had his historic visit here in Israel, marking the return of our 20 living hostages and helping Israel reach a critical point in this war. Together, this relationship between the Prime Minister's team and President Trump's administration is changing the Middle East and the world, creating opportunities not only for security but also for expanding peace. Prime Minister Netanyahu said he was impressed with the Vice President's clarity, sharpness, solidarity for our common cause, and sincere friendship that he saw in conference and private meetings that took place today. I can also add they discussed in depth about the Gaza Strip and how they can see the plan progressing in the near future. I can also tell you that Secretary of State Marco Rubio is coming back to Israel this week. He will be arriving on Thursday and is scheduled to meet with the Prime Minister on Friday. This is the Secretary of State's third trip to Israel since mid-September, which further shows the hand-in-hand relationship that Israel and the United States have as we mark this historic time. I'll take a few questions right now. The first question, Peter Smith, ITV News. Have you been investigating or have you investigated the images and allegations coming from international NGOs in Gaza that Palestinian detainees were returned showing signs of torture and execution? Is this the condition the bodies were in when you, Israel, sent them over. What I can tell you is that Israel, of course, adheres to all international law when it comes to any actions inside of the Gaza Strip. These types of reports that come out, Peter, is just more evidence and more efforts to demonize Israel, as so many media outlets continue to do on a daily basis. If you're going to report on something like this, you should certainly also report on the torture, the abuse, the starvation our hostages had to endure for 2 years. 20 of our released living hostages are telling their stories. I really hope that if you're reporting on this, you're also reporting on our hostages who are now starting their pathway to rehabilitation after being locked up in cages, chains, and like I said, nearly being starved to death. And also, you should be reporting on what Hamas is doing to their own people. These horrific videos continue to pour out of the Gaza Strip of men being blindfolded, being beaten in the center of these cities by bats. It's horrific to see, and hopefully all media outlets like yourself are reporting on that violence as well. Joel Pollack, Breitbart News. There are reports that Arab and Muslim countries who committed to President Trump's plan are now reluctant to contribute to the military force necessary to patrol Gaza because they're afraid to face Hamas and they're afraid of being accused of occupying Gaza. Many of the same countries criticize Israel for standing up to Hamas. Can you comment on this reported reluctance and whether it jeopardizes the plan or whether it would require Israel to take over Gaza in the end? So like I mentioned before, Vice President J.D. Vance and Prime Minister Netanyahu met today. Of course, they discussed the future of this plan inside of the Gaza Strip. And also, just to mention and reiterate, the full coordination, both countries are consistently in together. They spoke about the future of this plan, what this security force will look like in the future of the Gaza Strip. But to follow back on the 20-point plan, we continue to reiterate Hamas will have no future inside of the Gaza Strip. Of course, this is a shared goal between Israel and the United States. They will be disarmed, Gaza will be demilitarized, and we will ensure that Gaza never poses a threat to the state of Israel ever again. Okay, next question from Adam Parsons from Sky News. The U.S. administration has made it clear that in their minds there is no deadline involved in recovering the deceased hostages and that they accept the logistical difficulties outlined by Hamas. Do you agree with this? And following on that, when will you be reopening the Rafah crossing? The Rafah crossing is currently closed at this point in time, but aid continues to come into the Gaza Strip as per the plan, as per Israeli policy. But going back to your question about the hostages, we are committed to bringing every single hostage back home. The Prime Minister has made this commitment. He's made this promise since day one of this war. He will bring everyone back home, even when people here in the government doubted that the Prime Minister could do it. Here he is. We are 2 years later in this war. 20 of our living hostages have come home, and we have 13 deceased hostages left inside of the Gaza Strip. The Prime Minister has made it abundantly clear no one will be left behind, and we are demanding for the release of our 13 deceased hostages that are still in captivity at this point in time. It is a war objective. It is objective from the beginning the Prime Minister set, and it is objective he will be following through on. This is Hanan Julian, the Jewish edition. Has Secretary of State Marco Rubio's trip to Israel been confirmed? And if so, when is he expected? I confirmed in this briefing, I'm not sure if you heard, but Secretary of State Marco Rubio will be arriving on Thursday. He will be meeting with the Prime Minister on Friday. Those are all the questions that I see right now. Okay, thank you all so much for joining. Appreciate your time.